Hi class, we're back with lesson 7 and we're still talking about the theme of personal finance, and what we're going to talk about in most of unit 7 is credit cards. And it talks here at this lesson, just kind of a little introduction, that when you use a credit card you can either pay off the amount you charge each month, but if you don't pay off the amount you charged, then you're borrowing money from the credit card company. So if you pay the full amount off each month, typically you don't get charged interest. But if you do have any sort of balance left on it, then you of course are paying interest on that balance. And of course the unpaid balance is your credit card debt. It says many people in the U.S. are concerned about the amount of credit card debt for individuals, but also for society, just the general idea that we have so much credit card debt. And in this lesson we're going to use skills and ideas that we've used before to solve some issues about, or look at some issues with credit cards. So a few years ago, the government made a rule that when a credit card company gives you information about a credit card, that it has to be in a certain format. It's kind of along the same lines as if you're talking about like the nutrition labels on food, that they have to have it in a certain format. This came after the food labels, and it's kind of the similar idea that before, the things that the consumer would look at were so confusing, and it was hard to find exactly what the information that you needed when a credit card statement came out. So they said this is how it has to be. It has to say annual percentage rate, it has to say what the APR is, and that there's a range and all of that. So let's read this. It says that 0.00% introductory APR, which of course means no interest rate, introductory annual percentage rate for 6 months from the date of account opening. So it doesn't say from the date that you first use it, it says from when it's open. And then it says after that, your annual percentage rate could be between 10.99% to 23.99% based on your credit worthiness. And then it can also vary with the market based on the prime rate. So some of this is based on your credit worthiness, some of it is based on what the prime rate is. So this amount can change, but they have to notify you. So credit card companies measure your credit worthiness with your credit score. High credit scores are good. So what we're going to be doing in our lessons is, if it says that you have a high credit score, then that means you're going to get the lower percentage rate because you have good credit, so you're going to get the lower percentage rate. That's easy to mix up sometimes, but let me kind of underline it with different colors here. So high credit scores get the low interest rate, and then if you have a low credit score, so if you had a low credit score, we'll just write that over here since they don't have it in the thing. So a low credit score would get you the higher rate. So you'd have to pay more interest if you had bad credit. Okay? So now we're going to explore what this does to your how much you have to pay, whether you have good credit or bad credit, and get that better percentage or the worse percentage. So it says Juanita and Brian both have a credit card with the terms in the disclosure form above, and they both had their cards for more than 6 months, which is important because that means we're not doing the 0% anymore. So it says Juanita has good credit and gets the lowest interest rate possible. She's not able to pay off the balance each month, so she pays interest. Estimate how much interest she would pay in a year if she maintained an average balance of $5,000 each month on her card. Now again, it's hard to maintain exactly a $5,000 balance, but we're going to make it mathematically just a little bit easier so we can explore it and not have to deal with some of the nuances that are kind of difficult. We're just going to say, assume that she can pay down, so there's a $5,000 balance and she's just paying interest on that $5,000. So how much would she have to pay? Well, it says for now, they just want us to estimate it. So if we're estimating that, we've got $5,000, and that's at 10.99%. Now, the same as when you're at the store and you see something that costs $10.99, if somebody asked you how much it was, you likely wouldn't say it costs $10. You would probably say it costs $11, because 10.99 is pretty much 11. It's, you know, as we're talking money, it's a penny away. When you're talking percentages, it's 100th of a percent, which is 1/100th of a percent is already 1/100th, so it's 1/100th of 1/100th, which is like 1/10,000th of a 1/10,000th. So it's, you know, very, very close to 11%. So if I wanted to estimate this, remember we learned that strategy of finding 10% very quickly by just shifting over. So 10% in a year, if you maintained a $5,000 balance, would be $500 for the year. Well, to get 1%, we do the same thing. We just shift it over 2 spots instead of just 1 spot. So 10% is $500. 1% would be $50. We move the decimal point to make the number smaller. And so for 1 year, that would be about $550. So if she maintained that $5,000 balance over the course of a year, she would pay $550 just to maintain that balance, just in interest. That wouldn't reduce her credit card debt at all. That's just what she's paying the bank to borrow that money. So now let's look at Brian. Brian, it says, has a low credit score. And remember, low means you get the higher percentage rate. So Brian is paying that highest rate. He's not able to pay his balance each month, so he pays interest. Again, calculate how much interest he would pay in a year if he maintained an average balance of $5,000. Now on this one, it didn't actually ask us to estimate it. It actually asked us to calculate it, because 23.99 is a little harder to estimate than 11%. So 24% is a little harder than 11%. But still, at the same time, let's estimate it. 23.99%, whoops, is pretty darn close to 25%. I mean, I know I'm a whole percentage point off, but 25% is 1/4, so that's easy. So what would be 1/4 of $5,000? Well, half of $5,000, 50%, would be $2,500. And then 25% would be half of that, so that would be $1,250. So I'm going to calculate this exactly, but the biggest thing I want to point out right now is look at how much of a difference that is between what Juanita is paying with her good rate and what Brian is paying with his bad rate. You know, he's paying more than double what she is paying. So now let's look at how to calculate it exactly. So in order to calculate this exactly, we're going to take his $5,000 and we're going to multiply that by the 23.99%, which as a decimal, remember, we shift that over, so that'd be 0.2399. We take the percentage and we shift the decimal 2 spots to the left, which then gives us 0.2399. And if we type that into the calculator, 5,000 times 0.2399 gets us 1,199.50. So like I said, this was a little high because I rounded it up to 25%, but still we're at nearly $1,200 rather than only $550. So that's more than double what Juanita is paying. So the next question asks, what are some things that might affect your credit score? And this is usually something that when we do it in class, we have quite a discussion on this, because there's a lot of things that can affect your credit score. So let's make 2 columns here. Let's put a positive and a negative, and kind of list out some of the things that could cause you to have a good credit score or a bad credit score. So of course a good credit score, and of course the converse can typically be put on the other side, but we'll just put it on one side or the other. So positively, of course, if you make on-time payments. And if you don't make on-time payments, then that could affect you negatively. Something else that can, of course, positively is repaying a loan. So if you take out a car loan or something like that, not only being on time with the payments, but being complete with the loan, like completely repaying that loan. Other things are actually having some debt, what they call good debt, where you actually follow whatever the rules were for the loan that you had. Of course, having a high income, having other things that are so having things that are of value, that are assets, owning a car. So if you own your own car, if you own other property, especially if you own it outright, things like that can help. Things that can hurt is, of course, not paying on time, or defaulting on a loan or something like that. But other things are high debt. If you have what they call too high of a debt to income ratio, then that affects you negatively. So if they feel like you have too much debt compared to how much you make, for instance, we spoke before, if you had $10,000 credit card debt and you made only $20,000 a year, that would be concerning to the credit agency. But if you had $10,000 debt and you made $150,000 a year, then they wouldn't be as concerned about it, because your income is so much higher that the debt isn't as dangerous. Some other things that affect it, one thing that affects it is if you have lots of credit checks on your account. You don't want to do any more credit checks than you have to, because it actually can affect your credit negatively, believe it or not. There's actually two different types of credit checks. There's a soft check and a hard check. When they do a soft check, that doesn't affect it. That's where they just kind of peek at it. But then a hard credit check is when they go out and they actually, go to the credit card, or the where they go to the credit reporting agencies and get like all the information that they have, and notify them that you're doing that. And the reason that raises or lowers your credit score is because that indicates to them that you're trying to get more credit. And so if you're trying to get more credit, then they take that as a hit. I know all this stuff seems a little weird. I didn't make the rules. Another thing that can negatively affect your credit, and I think this varies from state to state. I'm not an expert on this by any means. This is just from my own personal experience. But if you have claims on your insurance, and I think that varies from state to state. I think there's some states where it's illegal for them to do that. But in some states, I believe if you make a claim even against like your auto insurance or your house insurance, then that lowers your credit rate, your credit rating, your credit score. And so there's lots of different things that can affect this. And if you are interested in it, this would be something, if you're going to get a credit card, it might be good, or if you have a credit card already, it might be good to look up and find out some of those things. And not even just a credit card. If you're going to have a loan, or you're just curious about your credit score, you can go and you can look up what affects my credit score with a Google search very easily. So believe it or not, that's the end of Lesson 7A, and we're on to Lesson 7B now. The first question that they ask us here is, what do you think APR stands for? And the answer to that question, we already actually kind of talked about that in the last lesson, that APR means annual percentage rate. And so annual means in a year, or per year. So annual percentage rate is how much you would pay in an entire year on a specific balance. So how often are you supposed to pay your credit card bill? Well, obviously the credit card company isn't going to let you not pay your bill for a year. typically, again, I don't know of any situation where it's not, they have you pay every month. So monthly credit card bill is usually how it's billed. And it says, how would you calculate the interest rate for that period of time? Well, in order to do that, we would divide by 12 because there's 12 months in a year. So if we wanted to take these APRs and make them a monthly rate, we would take 10.99 divided by 12 or 23.99 divided by 12. We're not going to do that right now. We'll just leave it at that. So it says Juanita has good credit and gets the lowest interest rate possible. She has a balance of $982 on her January statement. What is her periodic rate? Now, they never explained to us exactly what periodic means. So periodic is just simply a rate for a certain period, and for a credit card, that period would be monthly. So let's kind of write that down. When they say periodic rate for these credit card problems, that's the same as saying monthly. So what's their monthly rate? So if we were going to figure out her monthly rate, since Juanita has good credit, we're going to go up here and we're going to have 10.99%. And we're going to take that and divide it by 12. So if we, again, grab your calculator, if you do 10.99 and you divide that by 12, you get about 0.915833. So if I round that properly, it is about 0.92 because it's 915, and so I'm going to round that 1 to a 2. So it's about 0.92%. So that's less than 1%. Now, I'm going to come back and talk about this a bit. I don't really like it. I don't like doing the problems this way. I'll show you how I like to do them, and you can kind of decide what you like. But the book kind of pushes you to use this periodic rate or this monthly rate. I prefer to stick with the annual rate and then calculate it, and then divide that answer by 12, because then we're not dealing with these weird percentages. So when we get to that part of the problem, I'll kind of explain that. The next thing it asks here is, which of the following is the best estimate of how much interest she will pay? Explain your answer. So again, 0.92 is awfully close to 1, 92 cents. If you thought of it, it's 92 cents. 92 cents is awfully close to $1. So she's going to pay close to 1% of her balance. Now we don't have a $5,000 balance anymore. We only have a $982 balance. So if we have $9 or $982 balance, and we're going to pay roughly 1%, that would get us, we got to shift this over 2 spots, that would be about $9.82. So she's going to owe, again, we routed this up, so she's going to owe less than $10 in interest. So if we came down here, it's not less than $1, but it's not $10. It's more in this range, somewhere between 5 and 10. In fact, I'm pretty certain it's somewhere between 9 and 10. And then lastly for this, and then we'll get on to the next page, is it talks about what a cash advance is. And a cash advance is when you use your credit card to get cash instead of using it to buy something. So you go to the bank and you say, I'd like to take out $500 against my credit card. That has a different rate than if you go to the store and buy an appliance for $500. You pay more interest when you get a cash advance. It says for most cards, they're more expensive, not only for that the interest rate is higher. So that's what I just explained. But also, the interest is charged on an advance from the first day it is made. So we talked before that if you pay your credit card off every month, you don't owe any interest. Well, that's only if you use it to buy things. If you get a cash advance, as soon as you get that cash advance, they're starting to charge you interest on it. There's no monthly leeway on that. So it says finally with this little discussion that we're to refer to the disclosure from preview assignment 7A. So that's this disclosure. And this one just says purchases. If you go back and look at the one that was actually in lesson 7A, it actually says annual percentage rate APR for purchases. So when we're looking at this number right here, this 10.99% and this 23.99%, that's only for purchases. And there would be, on the statement, there would be another line for what the cost was for cash advances, and it would have to say that that would, be started. I can't remember how they word it, but they say something to the effect that starting on the first day or starting immediately or something like that, that the interest rate for those cash advances starts right away. Okay, so now we're going to finish up our discussion for this lesson by talking about whether these statements are reasonable. So we have here, as I spoke about just a little bit ago, the separate line for the cash advances. So 28.99% is what this credit card is saying that it will charge for cash advances. And it says, for Part A, Jeff pays the highest interest rate for purchases. He would pay 5 cents per dollar more in interest for cash advance for that purchase, or than for a purchase. Or Part B, the interest for cash advances is a little more than 2.5 times as much as for the lowest rate for purchases. So we're just going to talk about if these are reasonable statements, if these are true. So for Part A, Jeff pays the highest rate for purchases. So they're saying he has probably not real good credit and he's paying this amount for his purchases. So it says he would pay 5 cents per dollar more. So let's compare. This is what he would pay for the cash advances. This is what he was paying for things that he purchased. So if we look at the 23.99%, they're trying to find out how much more per dollar he would pay. So 23.99% on $1 calculates out to be 23 cents, 23.99 cents, so almost 24 cents. I'll write it like that because that's a little unusual to have that many decimal places for money. So it's almost 24 cents. And then the rate for cash advances is 28.99% on $1. And on $1, 28.99% would be, if we shift the decimal 2 spots, that's 0.2899, which is essentially 29 cents. If we round the 8 up. So here we rounded the 3 up to 4 because it was followed by these 9s. Here we rounded the 8 up to 9. So on every dollar that Jeff spends, he has to pay 5 more cents. So that's exactly true. For Part B, it says we're supposed to look at the lowest rate for purchases. So now we're going to look at the 10.99% and see how that compares to the cash advances. So if you're getting this lower rate, how much more are you paying for cash advances? And obviously the difference between 10.99 and 28.99 is more than 23.99 to 28.99. So the person who has bad credit has already got a bad annual percentage rate. And so a cash advance wouldn't be that much worse. It would, I mean, it's still worse, but it's not that much worse than what they're already getting. But this person who's got this good 10.99% rate for their purchases, when they decide to do a cash advance, they really take a hit. And it says it's a little bit more than 2.5 times. Now remember, 10.99% is essentially 11%. Not quite, but pretty darn close. And then, of course, 28.99% is basically the same as 29%. Just a tiny bit under that. So if we take 11% and it's saying it's 2.5 times as much, let's see what 11 times 2.5. Well, 11 one time would be 11. 11 two times, okay, so 11 times 2, and I shouldn't put equals here. Let me just put an arrow here instead of an equals. So 11 times 2 would be 22. 11 times half, or 0.5, would be 5.5. So if we put those together, 11% times 2.5 would be 27.5 if I add these together. So it says again, the interest for cash advances is a little more than 28.99 versus 27.5, as much as the lowest rate for purchases. So that is correct. They're paying more than 2.5 times their regular purchase interest rate for using or getting a cash advance. Okay, so now let's pick up or finish up with these last couple questions. It says, Brian used a spreadsheet to record his credit card charges for a month, and he used the following expression to calculate his interest for these charges. So this would be the formula that he could put in this cell if he wanted to get the interest paid for the month. So let's look at this spreadsheet. We've got credit card charges for the month, gas, groceries, restaurant, movie tickets, and then we're trying to calculate the interest paid. So remember, Brian had the higher interest rate because he had a lower credit score. So what Brian did is he took the interest rate, divided it by 12. That's because we wanted to make it monthly, not yearly. And then he multiplied that by the sum of all the charges. So which of these statements provides the best explanation? Brian added his individual charges, then he divided 0.2399 by 12, then he multiplied the two numbers. That seems reasonable. I mean, it is, you know, we add these up, divide that by 12, and then multiply. Let's see if there's a better way to say it. This says Brian found the interest charge for the month by dividing 0.2399 by 12 and multiplying it by the sum of column B. Now that seems to make more sense to me because this one seems backwards. If you follow order of operations, it does say parentheses first, and then divide, and then we're going to do this division before we multiply. So technically this one is correct. You should do the parentheses first, but they would both get the same result. So let's look at this. Brian found the periodic rate by dividing the APR by 12 months and multiplied the periodic rate by the sum of the individual charges. This calculation gives the interest charge for the month. Well, this is true also, but the fact is here is it says divided the APR by 12 months and multiplied the periodic rate by the sum of the charges. We're not getting any numbers in here. So I would like to see some sort of combination between these two, or A and C. I think A and B are really both okay. But I like the numbers. So maybe Brian found the periodic rate by dividing the APR of 0.2399 by 12 months and multiplied the periodic rate by the sum of the individual charges. Might have been a little bit more accurate. So then it asks here, and this is where I was talking about earlier that I would do differently. I don't like this idea of dividing the interest rate by 12 and then multiplying. If I was going to calculate this, I would take the charges, what is that, B2 plus B3 plus B4. Remember, we don't want to use the actual numbers because we want this to adjust if you put different numbers into the cells. So we're going to put the cells, B2, B3, B4, B5. And then multiply that times the interest rate, 0.2399. And again, since this is a multiplication, this could be actually either way. And then after that, divide by 12. So get the total of what you would get for a year, and then once you get that total of the interest you would pay for a year, then divide that by 12. I like this better because when you do this, you get a kind of a small, unusual decimal, and it tends to bother people. Whereas here, you get that bigger number first, and then you divide it by 12. And then, of course, since it's a formula in a Excel spreadsheet, we should put an equals sign there. So if we were going to write a formula, it'd be equals the sum of these times the interest rate, and then divide by 12 to get the monthly. and these two could be switched if you wanted. So I'm going to stop here for this video, and I will pick back up with 7C in the next video.